Nelson Mandela once said, "Sport has the power to change the world." He pointed out how sports can unite people, bring hope, and provide truly unpredictable moments of excitement and joy. All of this is true. Sports allow us to forget about life for a little bit and tap into the intrinsic human competitive spirit. Non-sports fans may dismissively shake their heads at the global obsession with sports, but they're missing the point entirely. Sports can deliver dramatic finishes, shocking results, and fairy tale victories that Hollywood could never produce. For a lot of people, sports are the reason to get up in the morning, regardless of their socioeconomic standing and place in the world. However, which sport brings in the most joy to fans? Which sport's the most popular on each continent? In order to get a crystal clear idea here, we're going to be looking at the most watched sports as well as sports with the highest participation rates, as those aren't always the same. So what are the sports that get fans out of their chairs, screaming, celebrating, whooping, hollering, or weeping for days on end to face painting and whatever you're into? Well, the first stop, we're going to Europe. Europe's most watched and most played sport is the same, football, or soccer, of course. Football is by far the most popular sport on the continent. From Manchester to Moscow, people watch it, play it, talk about it, and quite often dream about it. In the UK, Germany, Italy, and Spain, at least half of the populations watch football regularly, either on TV or at a venue. Over 1 million people play football regularly in Spain and Britain, while more than 2 million Germans play some kind of football. In fact, the German Football League is one of the biggest sporting bodies in the world. Massive tournaments such as the European Cup and the Champions League attract worldwide attention and cause TV executives to drool in delight. An estimated 350 million people tune into the Champions League final, which decides the best team in Europe. As for the next most popular sport in Europe, it depends on where you live. In countries such as the UK and France, rugby is widely played, very widely watched as well. If you head to the northern and eastern regions, ice hockey and winter sports have a large following. In terms of pure participation, basketball is a big sport in Europe, especially in the southern and eastern countries. However, in terms of the European numero uno, it is football first and daylight second. Next, it's off to Asia, where things vary pretty wildly. The incredibly diverse histories and cultural makeups of the countries in the world's largest continent mean that there is a multitude of popular sports. There is no clear most popular sport across the whole continent, so it's easier to focus on specific regions. East Asia is the most economically developed region of Asia, and it has stronger cultural ties to Europe and North America. As a result, soccer and baseball are very widely popular, particularly in Japan and South Korea. Both countries were co-hosts of the 2002 World Cup. They have highly developed competitions, and their natural teams are amongst the strongest in Asia. China has one of the fastest growing soccer leagues in the world, with an estimated 200 million fans who either watch games on TV or attend live. All countries also have high participation rates amongst their youth, which is always a good sign of a sport's popularity. In Korea and Japan, baseball is also seriously popular. Baseball became a mainstream sport post-World War II with the strong American presence and influence. As far as participation for adults goes, East Asian adults are seriously into their golf, tennis, badminton, and table tennis, the latter of which is regarded as China's real national sport. Significantly, East Asian women are also strongly represented in their respective sports, especially in comparison with other Asian countries. While football is certainly starting to catch on in much of Southeast Asia, these countries are just as well known for their unique sports. Muay Thai kickboxing in Thailand is such an example, while Malaysia's sepak takraw vaguely resembles a feet-only type of volleyball. It's in Southern Asia that sporting tastes are entirely different. In countries such as India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, cricket is by far the most popular sport. Brought to India by the British in the 1700s, cricket quickly became popular on the subcontinent and is now a cultural institution. Cricket is played and watched religiously in Southern Asia by men and women, young and old, rich and poor. India in particular has a lucrative professional league that attracts big names from all over the world. The Indian Premier League is thought to generate around $4 billion per year in revenue, much of which is made up of TV and streaming deals. And yet, when it comes to big boys like America's NFL and the UK's EPL, that's small potatoes. The NFL makes around $29 billion per year, while the EPL is the world's biggest sport moneymaker with a whopping $37 billion reported in earnings in 2022. If we look into West Africa, the clear winner is, again, football. Although other sports such as basketball, rugby, and cricket have all been introduced to African countries, it's soccer that binds the continent together. One reason is pretty obvious: football is relatively cheap and accessible of a sport to play. You only need a ball, and you can play most anywhere, in any weather. Despite relatively low funding, African nations have punched well above their weight on the international stage, with more than a dozen making World Cup appearances. Senegal, Morocco, Nigeria, and Cameroon have all successfully fostered their football industries. Youth and school programs have resulted in numerous African players making it into the big old European leagues, although this has mainly been in relation to men. As we duck down into the world's smallest continent, we can see that Australia has a vibrant sporting culture. Not surprisingly, in a country blessed with open spaces and favorable weather, Australians love their sport. Soccer or football is easily the most popular sport in terms of participation. Over 1 million Aussies enjoy some sort of football, ranging from preschoolers to the pros. In terms of which sport earns the most TV and sponsorship revenue, we're looking at oval-shaped codes, two to be precise. Unlike other countries that have one predominant winter sport, Australia is fiercely divided between rugby league and Australian rules football. Depending on which state you live in, one of the two is going to be the only sport that matters, making for awkward conversation if rugby nuts of rival codes bump into each other. Summer provides Australia's most popular sport, cricket. Just as in Southern Asia, England, South Africa, and New Zealand, millions of Australians waste away their summer hours watching cricket. The sport owes its popularity to its British colonial origins, and it's often watched raucously in pubs or at barbecues. Yes, a most raucous outing of watching cricket. Jumping across the Pacific Ocean, we come to a truly football-mad part of the world, South America. As massive as soccer is in Europe, South America takes it to the next level. While Europeans also follow and play other sports besides football, the global game is the first, second, and probably third most popular sport in South America. World powerhouses such as Brazil and Argentina frequently feature in World Cup finals, and the European leagues are full of clubs vying for South American players' signatures. When Argentina won the 2022 World Cup, fans in Buenos Aires partied for weeks. Over 5 million people flooded into the city center, and the team bus ride was replaced by a helicopter flight over the frenzied masses. Moving on up to North America, we find the continent spoiled for sporting choices. For the US, it's the big three: football, basketball, and baseball, with ice hockey, soccer, and MMA coming up close behind. Fans of the three biggest sports will lay claim to their sport being the most popular, so we'll go to TV ratings for this one. American football's NFL is a true sporting Goliath. Trailing only England's soccer Premier Leagues in terms of revenue, the NFL is hands down the most watched sport in the US. While plenty of people will tune into a Lakers vs. Bulls basketball game or watch the baseball's World Series, it really is football that brings Americans together. Not me, I don't like it, but, a lot of Americans. For starters, getting together and watching a game at Thanksgiving is one of the truly great American traditions. I even like watching football on that day. And then there's the colossus called the Super Bowl, which stops the nation every second Sunday in February and has artists like Beyonce and Eminem lining up to perform. But as for the sport that most people actually play, well, that's a hard one. Casual and competitive games of basketball are played everywhere, while soccer's probably the biggest growing sport in the country. As for Canada, it's a no-brainer. Ice hockey all the way, baby. Although Canadians watch plenty of basketball, baseball, and football, nothing fires them up like a battle on the rink. Although the bulk of North America's NHL teams are based in the US, almost half of them are Canadian. No, it's actually joked that many Canadians learn to skate before they can walk, and that's pretty evident if you look around any Canadian city or town. Plenty of ice rinks, plenty of people playing, practicing, discussing, and arguing about ice hockey. Anyways, that was fun, thank you. The remaining continent is Antarctica, and it seems to be more of a question of what sports don't people enjoy way down south? With no gardens, no pets, or elderly relatives to take care of, Antarctic residents have pretty good amount of free time. Volleyball, basketball, soccer, and rugby are all played competitively. And then, of course, there are outdoor sports. Curling, cross-country skiing, and ice running are just a few, but if you really want to test your superhuman abilities, the Antarctic 100-kilometer ultramarathon might just be the ticket. Or not, So there it is. While soccer is statistically the world game, each continent has its unique sporting tastes. What's clear, though, is that the sport offers people an escape, a challenge, and at the very least, something to talk about. And what's wrong with that?